So welcome to chapter 2 of Engage and Grow. What we're going to look at in this chapter is really about why are they disengaged? Why are your teammates, your team members, your employees disengaged at work? And I want to throw to you first, Rich. What is it that an employee actually needs to be engaged at work? I mean, what are their needs for that?
Really big question. I think there's going to be a theme with these chapters, and the theme of engagement, as I've mentioned earlier, it's all about the leadership, in my opinion. And add to that, it's about equality. So if they're seen, they're respected, they're heard, they're developed, they've got a shared vision, because equality creates unity, and unity creates trust. And trust brings out the truth of an organisation, and that's when you're a high-performing team.
Now, when we go to building engaged companies, though, some people don't want to be engaged, but some will leave during that process. Is that okay?
Hallelujah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you put it in a rowboat. You know, according to Gallup, you got 8 people not rowing towards success.
Right.
Right. So you need, and actually 2 of those 10 are actually trying to sink the boat.
Right.
So they're rowing backwards.
They're rowing backwards, man. They're putting a hole in the boat. Right. The anchor's out. So we need to know, right, who's throwing the anchor out. And so the process that we've unfolded obviously allows for
So if I was watching this book, I'd be sitting there thinking right now, by name, who are those people I can think of that are actually actively disengaged to the point where they're sabotaging the company.
Actually, Jeff Bezos makes an example of this. In fact, I think he took a lot of heat at Amazon around this. Now, Jeff's, you have to say, is doing pretty well. He's now the world's richest guy. He's kind of eating the planet. He's now got Whole Foods.
Yeah.
And so when you think about this, he says that the people who are sitting around your staff table, these are your greatest supporters for engagement and the worst saboteurs. You've got them all around you. You don't need consultants to tell you this stuff. And it would be nice if people self-selected in. It's okay.
Yeah.
Those who want to go elsewhere, please.
Well, back to your point, which I think is very well taken. The thing I've learned as an executive coach, I can't make anyone get better.
Yeah.
And I've learned if people don't care, don't waste your time.
Right.
And I can help people that care get better. I can't help people that don't care get better. Michael Dell had a great saying on this. He said, pay them to leave.
Yes.
Yeah.
Pay them to leave. If they're pushing the boat in the wrong direction, just get rid of them, whatever it takes.
Yeah.
And again, this is a good program, but this is not a religious conversion experience for everybody. This is not going to make people who don't care start caring just because they listen to us.
Correct.
So
They do that, in fact, at Amazon. They pay them to leave. And all the subsidiaries, you know, I'll give you
Zappos
$2,000.
does it.
Zappos
Yeah,
does it. It's time to go. Welcome.
You know, Marshall, when we look at people leaving, let's think about that for a minute.
Yes.
Because sometimes people do leave of their own accord. I mean, yes, we should get rid of the ones that are disengaged to that degree. Why do you think it is people leave companies? What is that?
The real key is why do good people leave? It's not why do people leave. There's nothing wrong with someone leaving who doesn't care. The problem is when people leave who do care.
Exactly.
That's the real problem. And the main reason people leave who do care is bad management. And really, typically, when I say management, I don't mean the company. I mean the exact human who works with them.
Yeah.
So what I do in my job is every leader gets 360-degree feedback that's confidential. They learn how they're perceived by all the people around them. We develop a very clear follow-up system, and we measure, do they become a more effective leader, not as judged by himself or herself, as judged by everyone around them. And as you know, I only get paid if they get better. So I really focus on helping leaders achieve positive, long-term change in behavior. And as leadership effectiveness goes up, what happens to employee engagement? Employee engagement goes up with it. So a key factor is this. Now, the one thing I've learned over the years is this stuff is easier to talk about than it is to do. If you read my book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There, you read funny story after funny story after funny story. It's very tempting to read that book and these people are all idiots. Well, they all have IQs of 150 and they're all CEOs of multi-billion-dollar companies. And I'll tell you, the stuff is pretty easy to understand. It's hard to do. It takes a lot of discipline. And what we don't do is we don't apply the same engagement discipline as we do technical discipline. And you really need to say, what is the people discipline we need to apply? And it's just as, or as you said, even more important to apply this people discipline.
That's it.
Now, you mentioned profiling in there, and I want to throw that one to you for a second, Rich, because the profiling tools you talk about, Marshall, are used to give feedback and used to bring the leader to be a better leader.
Yes.
Some profiling tools, though, some of the, that we use as the HR team, they actually do the opposite of engaging people. Rich, tell us more about that, because I think that's important to learn.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Well, with the profiling, I think profiling is critically important for communication, understanding the different types of colours in the organisation. But at its core, in my theory, a business leader and a business owner just wants to know do you care? That's all they want to know. So I think there's another level of profiling. So yes, it's great. We spend a lot of money on profiling. It's excellent for communication. But I think the key factor is, and when it comes to engagement, that's all it's about.
Well, let's throw it then to surveys, because surveys is another disengagement tool.
There's so much frustration
And
there.
I remember when the three of us were advising one particular organisation, which will remain nameless, that did amazing surveys of their genius employees, and they have thousands around the world. And then their report was a 700 and something page report, and not one action came from it.
No, of course not.
Right,
Of course
right.
not.
So how do you turn surveys into engagement tools,
Well,
Mark,
one of
I
the
guess?
biggest things that we've seen in the research that we did on this around looking at companies like that one and organizations, they have so much promise, they have so much data, they can't even use it. At Stanford, we did a study and we looked at how the difference on those employee surveys that makes them engaging or not, or big
Right,
turnout,
right.
is the annual versus the frequent contact.
Right.
And that annual survey, it's like people kind of waiting to the last minute to have the best behavior before they're reviewed, or they could get continuous engaging workflows, and that those workflows are enabled when you're giving fast, frequent feedback. It takes the sting out,
Yeah.
it empowers, and Marshall talks about feed forward versus feed back. It's also about what can you do next to do better, rather than shaming people or putting them down or spending so much time saying about how you got this wrong. Let's get focused on doing stuff, and that's the most engaging thing you can do for employees, really.
Now, Rich, surveys is an important part of building engagement, actually understanding it, but there can be ways to do it wrong.
Yeah, billions of dollars are spent on surveys. There's survey companies everywhere you look. And the biggest frustration for employees is surveys get done, but nothing happens.
Right.
Okay? And I went into a company recently and they told me that they were the top 5 in the survey kingdom and so forth, and everyone was fabulous. And so I went into their executive team. I started a program. I did a survey just with their executive. And it was a quick survey, 9 questions about how, and it gave us the results on how many people were emotionally connected to the business. And we came back with 11% out of 12. Right? He was devastated.
So there's one person basically.
Right. Then he said that can't be true, and then we started the program, and all of a sudden, out she came, and you could see we could see it like a football game.
Yeah. So is the traditional system broken then, Rich? Is it?
Well, in surveys or in leadership?
Well, in both. I guess let's talk about leadership then. Is the traditional, the superstar leader coming in to take the game and change the whole team, is that system broken, or is that a myth that the leader can do that?
Okay, I'm passionate about this one, Marshall. I know you are as well. In my opinion, this is underpinning the engagement issue. Because at the moment, big organisations, even small to medium, they take their best people, medium and senior manager, middle and senior, out of the business. It's like taking a fish out of a dirty pond and putting that fish into a clean pond, cleaning the fish down. He thinks he's going to change the world. It's amazing how he tries to bring these new inspirations back into the workforce, 1 or 2 or 3 of them, right, and can't get traction. Right, so there's a lot of wasted return on investment. So we're missing this group of people in here who aren't being activated. And that is one of the reasons why I think employee engagement is, as I say, a crisis.
Yes.
Marshall?
Well, I think if you look at the concept of leadership and engagement, again, a very, very clear relationship. Leaders need to take responsibility, and the employees also need to take responsibility. So I think the key here is mutual responsibility. The other thing is, back to engagement, why is it more important today than ever? I had the privilege of spending 50 days with Peter Drucker, world's greatest authority on management, and I got ranked #1 leadership thinker. I have the intellect of a 10-year-old compared to this guy. Well, Peter Drucker, he told me a lot of very, very smart things. One of the things he said is, today most people manage knowledge workers. What's the definition of a knowledge worker? They know more about what they're doing than the boss does. Well, look, if you report to me and you know more of what you're doing than I do, I can't tell you what to do and how to do it. I am dependent on your engagement. Now, if I know everything and I can just dictate to you and you do what you're told, that's fine. That's yesterday, that's not tomorrow.
Yeah.
In the world of tomorrow, the employees know more than the boss. If the CEO knows more about marketing than the marketing person, more about finance than the finance person, more about HR than the HR person, they don't have an engagement problem, they have a selection problem.
Yes.
They get the wrong team. You want your people to know more than you, and when you manage knowledge workers, you live and die on their engagement. If you manage people who are not knowledge workers, by definition, this is much less important That was yesterday. The knowledge worker is tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, you brought up recruiting and onboarding and all of that sort of stuff. I look at recruiting and onboarding as the start of engagement and how we recruit today. And the fact that, so many companies use outside recruitment firms and that person can't be engaged because they've not been brought in the right way. So how we onboard I think onboarding and recruiting is one of the biggest keys to disengagement. We'll talk more about how to solve that in a little bit. But also I think, Mark, compensation packages, technology, we seem to try and turn to technology or compensation to engage people. Give us your perspectives on that.
Well, if you put, I'm from Silicon Valley, I've big grounding in technology, but if you apply technology to a bad process, for some reason, it gets worse, not better. So doing an annual survey annually, whether it's automated or not, there's no machine learning or artificial intelligence that's going to fix the leadership problem. We have to be deeply and directly engaged. And there's really two measures, I think, at any level in a company, is to think about influence and incentives. So when we look at our senior executives, we look at our junior people, the high potential people, we need to be thinking about their ability to feel like they can have influence in an organization. You're paying them the money, why aren't you getting the yield? To Marshall's point, that when you are working with an individual who's smart, you want to be able to have them take accountability. They've got to be a deeper bench. I don't think people realize that a deeper bench means they're smarter than you or has better capability than you. That's what it's all about to get scale in your business and yourself. So understanding their capacity to be able to have influence and also impact. So if you're talking about the team, it's not about the most valuable player. It's about the most valuable team. It's about winning the championship, not about singling out that individual. Right?
We see that in sport all the time, where they go and recruit the best quarterback or the best goal kicker, and they think, wow, we're going to turn everything around with this one individual, and it just doesn't happen. And to compensation, we think that by changing the compensation plan, we're going to motivate them and get them all. And that's not what gets the heart and soul into humans. Money isn't the heart and soul of them. There might be a few people out there like salespeople. We know they're motivated by money and we kind of want them to stay that way, but the majority of humans, that's not the case.
The comp ends up being a problem because people don't align the incentives, the actual pay, for the values we've been talking about here in terms of engagement. It might be with a salesperson, it's just putting points on the board. But if they can't work with the team, they can't close more sales. So we need to create those measures that have the alignment around the compensation. I can't tell you the number of times human resources people see goals over here and business operations over there. We need to have behaviors in business compensated and aligned so that you have impact when you behave the right way and when you perform the right way.
Now, a lot of these things get in the way of engagement, but Rich, I also want to touch on the fact that people don't actually communicate as real humans. And that in a workplace where you have people that work together 20 years and didn't know each other's biggest issues or biggest challenges in life. They'll hide from them at work. Tell me more about that one, because I think that's really important.
Yeah, so you can break down a communication or a relationship within seconds. I just have to look at Marshall badly or give him a bad sort of vibe, and then that is stopped. Our relationship will slow down. And we're a fickle bunch, us human species. And one activity we do, which works really, really well, is we just actually force communication. We actually get the executive team and whoever we're running programs with to actually go and find one thing they didn't know about someone. And 3 people a week. And it only takes 15, 20 minutes, if that. You can be at the water cooler or walking through, but it's about not skimming past the conversations, actually digging deeper. And so we find that people really push back on this to some degree at the start, but once they enter it and they see the results and they build further communications, because the Harvard study recently said that the one thing that makes us the happiest, the people that live the longest, it's about having the most deepest and more meaningful relationships. So you bring that into the workplace and magic happens.
Yeah, I love what you're doing, because we have this tendency to deny the importance of structure. And there's a great book called The Checklist Manifesto, Dr. Atul Gawande. You go in for a surgery, the nurse asks the doctor a series of very simple questions from a checklist before the surgery. The odds on unneeded infection plummet, the death rate's cut by 2/3. The vast majority of hospitals around the world don't allow the nurse to do it because of ego. They're ashamed to need that kind of structure. Back to your point, it's a very clear, simple structure, yet people do it. If you don't have the clear, simple structure that you described, people say, tomorrow.
Yeah.
Next week. I'll do it later.
Well, your
And it
whole
never-
book, Triggers,
it never gets here.
Triggers takes us into in depth about that sort of stuff, so that's brilliant. But you got a lot of lessons with Amazon and Schwab that I think are really important to share on this, why disengagement and how you can turn it around.
Well, it's interesting because one of the mainstays of many of the great entrepreneurs I've worked with is that they all feel like they're learning damage. They have learning differences. And talking about Charles Schwab, he's been a person who was almost out of college several times because he couldn't do the English. Brilliant at finance, brilliant at marketing, and a point that we often make as coaches, and I learned directly from Marshall in the beginning, is we're very good at a very few number of things.
Right.
Yeah.
We're experts at a few things. We're not a jack of all trades. And so the reason we're trying to hire that deep bench is to get people in role who are able in their swim lanes to be able to work together and separately to do a great job. At Schwab, he ended up having to scale a business faster than anyone else coming out of Stanford because he recognized early on, it's not about me. It's not about the leader, and it's not about the coach. It's about enabling a team to win the championship. And so I need each of you to be the best you can possibly be.
Right.
And I need to be here not to screw it up and to break down those barriers and to enable in a big way. And I think that's why you've seen kind of transformational success at places like Amazon and Schwab, because it's always, always about the customer and the team that serves them. And I'm here to enable that journey.
Yeah, well, team, there's so many reasons a team can be disengaged. I mean, when we look at it, and every one of us watching this video knows for a fact that we've got disengaged employees or people doing not the level we want. It's about getting that deep bench and getting them all performing at a high level. And that's where we start on chapter 3.